I was going to ask you about Kuminga, but I honestly have nothing to say about him. Like I was texting like 3 or 4 people before we came on the air about like anything they had heard about Jonathan Kuminga, and I got some variation of all quiet, heard nothing going on there. My guess still with Kuminga is that he and the Warriors agree to some kind of short-term deal. I think it'll be longer than 1 year because I think he wants and his people want to save face on a new deal there. But the smoke around the Sacramento Kings, I don't think that's going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think Brooklyn had some interest for a minute, but I don't think that's going anywhere. A team like Washington, where it would make sense, is prioritizing cap space more than anything else, especially giving Kuminga any kind of long-term deal. Like, the other guys like Quentin Grimes, Josh Giddey, I'm pretty sure they re-signed as well. Kuminga was kind of the outlier there, that he's such a really good young talent, and the Warriors really don't see him as a long-term fit. I think he winds up back there. I don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but my guess is that it's like a 2-year, $50 million deal, something in that range, 3 years, 60, maybe if you want it with a player option on the 3rd year. I think somehow they work something out. I don't know if you have a different take on that, but my hype to talk Kuminga was dampened considerably when I just couldn't get any new information about it.
No joy. There's nothing. No joy. I mean, look, I think, first of all, absolutely. I've heard nothing in those corners either. I don't think there's any big takers for him and sort of committing the money going ahead for him.
Money's gone. The money's gone.
Yeah, money's gone. I think it's more just the discussion, or just sort of the question is a little bit of, restricted free agency. Not that it ever was, a huge outlet for players. It's just kind of become, it's not real really anymore, because we've just seen example after example where a team that wants a player has to so overpromise and so overpay to convince the other team to not sign the offer sheet themselves, that teams aren't doing it anymore. And I don't blame them. It's just not really a good system for anyone. And that means players are, quote, under team control really for 7 years before they have any choice. And if I was the Players Association, there's a lot of horse trading to be going on. They've basically already agreed to a hard cap, which is not what I ever thought was in their best interest. But I don't know where there's room to give an exchange on. But if there is a way to shorten that 7-year window, with the idea of what restricted free agency was maybe supposed to be in terms of shortening that window if a player doesn't feel he's being treated fairly, I think that's something to explore for them. I'm a big believer, by the way, that now that there's NIL money in college, that the age limit in the NBA should actually be raised. I think it should be 2 years. I think that would benefit teams that would know what they're getting in the draft better. And I think it would frankly benefit players who are getting developed on a more sort of micro level by these college coaches who are trained in development in a way not all pro coaches are, and they could still be getting paid. I mean, that was always the objection, right? It's not really fair to tell these guys, you're over 18, you're an adult, you can earn a living, but we're not letting you. I think now you can do that with a clear conscience. And by the way, the players who would have to vote on it are the players currently in the NBA. I mean, it's sort of like raising the drinking age or the driver's license age. You're not getting a vote from the people who would be most affected by it. So I would think that would be an easy thing for the current players to give. And I don't know if that would help with sort of ratcheting down those 7 years. I don't know exactly whose interests are what there, but I do think that the Kuminga situation is a valuable spotlight on restricted free agency basically not meaning anything in today's NBA, and what that means for players sort of obligated to 7 years with one team without any right to kind of do anything else otherwise. And I don't know. I don't love that.
Yeah. Restricted free agency has rarely led to a player switching teams. I think one of the most high profile ones recently was DeAndre Ayton. We discussed, signed that offer sheet with Indiana, and the Suns, even though they didn't really want to pay DeAndre Ayton, also didn't want to lose him for nothing. So even if you get an offer, you're very likely to see that offer match. And that's what's made teams over the years reluctant to make those offers, waste time with and potential resources waiting for a guy to wait for the team to decide to match it. It's become worse now because of these aprons and because there just isn't a lot of cap space out there for teams, in part because this goes along the same lines. Like, a lot of players are looking at the potential free agency and saying, you know what? I'm going to re-up in March or whenever I'm eligible to sign that extension. Brandon Ingram is a good example. I thought Rich Paul said something interesting on Sirius XM radio recently when Rich Paul represents Brandon Ingram. He said, we did that deal in part because I don't know what the market would have been. I'm paraphrasing, but I don't know what the market would have been for Brandon had he become a free agent that summer. So I think more and more as this, second apron, tax penalty reality sets in, you're going to see a lot more extensions signed earlier and much fewer players, both restricted and otherwise, wind up hitting the open market. I would say this. I don't think the union cares. I think the union is fine with the second apron so far because it has not depressed player salaries. Player salaries are still,
and they're about to go up even more.
And you are seeing some movement out there. I think the Luke Cornett deal was interesting from a player perspective because Luke Cornett, I think there might have been some thought that, hey, Boston was the only place that really wanted Luke Cornett. If he didn't get a deal with the Celtics, he might have had to go get a minimum somewhere else despite earning more than that. Well, no, San Antonio was out there with some cap flexibility. They signed Luke to what is basically a 2-year deal with some extra money if they cut him in year 3. So I think that the union's okay with how this is all going. And restricted free agency, I don't think they love it, but it's like the toothache they've had for 2 decades. Like they just got to deal with it. They just got to suffer through it. Maybe down the line there's a way to tweak that, to give players a little bit more flexibility, to allow them to make more money just by signing the qualifying offer. I think that would be helpful as well. Maybe there's some machinations there, but right now I think it's just, again, like the toothache they're stuck with. Like that's kind of what they have to deal with moving forward.